Hey guys, this is Zixz. Unfortunately, there seems to be a bit of disconnect between the competitive scene and the general population when it comes to how to play Battlegrounds to the best of your ability. Hopefully, I'll be able to shed a little light on how to secure those wins. Today, we'll be taking a look at the map Dragon Shire. So, Dragon Shire is a 3-lane map. There is a shrine on both the top and bottom lanes with a capture point mechanic. When both of those shrines are controlled by both teams, they will allow that team to channel and capture the Dragon Knight, which is located in the middle lane. So, the biggest thing I see in Hero League is how lanes are set up. It's severely different than what you would typically see in competitive, and I don't think people set them up to maximize efficiency on the map. What I'll see in Hero League usually is sort of a 2-1-2 setup. There'll be 2 people top, 1 person mid, 2 people bottom. And I can kind of understand the thought process behind it. And what I'm assuming is if you have 2 people bottom, you have 2 people top, that's where the shrines are. You'll be able to control the shrines. Controlling the shrines is the most important thing because that grants you the Dragon Knight, and the Dragon Knight is the key to ending the game because of how powerful it is. It's the main map objective. That's good thinking, but there's other things on the map that are just as important, and if you ever lose one of those lanes, you're going to have a hard time. Or if the enemy is able to take advantage of your team being very static of being in those lanes, and by taking mercenary camps and forcing like coordinated pushes on lanes that aren't reinforced and getting structures to get an experience lead, you're going to start getting behind if you stay in that sort of lane setup. The best way I think that Dragon Shire should be played, and the way that it's played on almost every game in competitive, is a 1-1 or a 1-4 setup. So we'll look at the top lane first, and I'll explain more about what that setup means. So you'll have 1 person in the top lane, and typically in this lane you're going to want a strong skirmisher, somebody who can duel really well, somebody who can survive well if they're ganked by the enemy team. You want to be able to safely soak that experience and control that shrine. So heroes like Thrall, who have very good self-sustain, have a move speed increase on Wind Fury, Zagara, who's got move speed and vision from her creep, and she has great range, and Hydra's allow her to trade against an enemy without taking any damage. Heroes like that are very, very strong for the top lane. The most important role of this lane is to control the shrine to the best of their ability. You don't need to always control it though. The key to this map is not simply getting both shrines, it's preventing the enemy from capturing the Dragon Knight. So even if you give up shrine control on both sides of the map very briefly, they still have the channel in the middle lane. If you guys are coordinating well enough, they shouldn't be able to get the DK in 5 seconds. That should never happen. So it's not an issue, just the main focus is be safe, don't die in the top lane. If you can make a play and kill their enemy top laner, that's great, because they're going to have to send resources up to the top lane, and that means they're going to have less people on the other side of the map. Now, let's talk about the 4. So, there's 2 other lanes, which makes it seem odd at first. Well, if there's 4 people in the middle lane, who are you putting bottom? Well, in the beginning of the game, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have your team as 5 people shoot over onto that middle lane. It's the shortest lane on the map. What's going to happen is the creeps are going to collide with each other in that lane before they do the other lanes. With 5 people, with the right team composition, if you're stronger than your opponent, who is there as well, you'll be able to clear out the wave, pushing your creep wave into their tower, and you're going to be able to freely rotate your solo laner to top, and then the rest of your team can rotate to the bottom lane and do the same thing to the bottom lane and clear that wave. And what you did just there is if you're stronger than your opponent, now they're going to be stuck behind this tower and they're going to have to leave somebody into the middle lane to soak up that experience. And then the most they're going to be able to have in the bottom lane is 3 people. And so then it's going to make them play reactively, and you'll be able to rotate from mid to bottom for a while before the Dragonite spawns at a minute and 15 seconds. This is going to give you immense map control. You're going to have this whole area if you win that rotation. That's so important. The only thing your opponent's going to be able to control is this. And depending on how their top laner is this area. But that's not important. Most important in the early game is all of this. So, the reason behind that is you have a shrine and you have also 2 siege giant camps. Yours and your enemies. On the top side of the map you have 2 night camps. Night camps in the early game you don't want to really think about. They shouldn't exist to you. They're too difficult to take that early on. It's going to take too many resources within that time. You're going to screw up your rotations. You're going to lose shrine control, and then you're going to be in a situation where you're scrambling to try to get that shrine control back, to get that map presence, and then you can possibly lose a Dragonite, and it's just not worth it. You don't get enough value out of the Knights. The risk reward isn't correct. With the Giants, they're much easier, much weaker, and they're closer to both of these lanes. So, say you're winning rotations, shrines are spawned, you guys have top shrine. Top shrine gets taken from you, you're doing giants, you have one person bottom lane, you have another in mid lane. They're like, oh, well, let's go take this Dragonite. So they mosey on down there, somebody steps onto that shrine, starts capping it. The good thing with the shrines in this map is that they grant you vision of whoever is currently capturing them. So if you're doing giants, if you're almost done, you can finish them. Or if you just started them, you can just abandon them. Doesn't matter, who cares, they'll be there regardless. And you have your mid laner come from mid down this way, and your bottom laner start fighting this person. You can collapse from the right side and you'll end up getting a kill. The good thing is you'll be able to react from the giants. But if you're to do knights, there's no way you're going to be able to react to the bottom side of the map, and you have to commit so much harder to the knights. So if you end up in a situation where you have to abandon that camp, you've probably taken a lot more damage from the knights. You're going to be low if they rotate people top side. If you're low, you could end up dying, and they get the Dragonite if you're down numbers. The most important thing is not letting them have an advantageous position where they can capture that Dragonite. Alright, so we've talked a little bit about how a lane should be set up, and we talked a little bit about mercenary camp timings. So let's talk a bit about the Dragonite objective itself. So, as I previously said, the first shrines will spawn at 1 minute and 15 seconds. There'll be a countdown before they spawn, you'll know when they're coming up, but having that information, letting your team know in case they don't know the exact time is good, because you guys can just be prepared to have somebody instantly into that lane, so you're able to capture it right off the bat. Every 2 minutes after Dragonite dies, the shrines will respawn. So say the Dragonite were to die at 3 minutes and 32 seconds. At 5 minutes and 32 seconds, those shrines will respawn. There'll be a warning a bit before it, but again, the information, knowing exactly when it's going to spawn way ahead of time, allows you to prepare. You can, for example, if it's spawning at 5 minutes and 32 seconds, at 4 minutes and 45 seconds, you can start your night camps if you have like a Sonya and a Rhaegar who can do it quickly and safely. it's not really an issue to take those camps because there's no shrines on the map currently. So you're not losing anything by applying those resources there because the objective hasn't respawned yet. And then if you hold that cap for another 15 seconds, by the time you're finished with it, you should be at about like 5 minutes and 15 seconds. That shrine's going to spawn in 15 seconds. And that's going to give you pressure on the top lane. So by the time that night camp reaches the top lane, you're going to have a lot of pressure in that lane. They're going to have to react to it. So because they're going to have to react to that, if they commit multiple people on the top side of the map, you can send somebody strong enough to capture the bottom shrine, and then you can rotate all 5 members, and you know they're going to be up here, and you can kill them. Or, since the lane's going to be pushed up, that person's going to have to deal with the push from the knights. They're going to have to clear out that camp. So they won't be able to take this shrine, so you have your top laner and take the shrine, and then you have the rest of your team contest for the bottom shrine. They can clear out mid. Somebody's going to have to soak up mid, so that means they're going to have one person there, and then they'll only be able to send 3 people on the bottom side of the map. So you're going to be able to capture the shrine bottom, you're going to have the shrine top, they're going to have knights pushing in on them. It's going to be a shit fest for their team, and you'll be able to get the Dragon Knight, and you'll get even more of an advantage. So, the Dragon Knight itself. Let's talk about when you actually get the objective. Now, there's 2 abilities in a passive that make it very, very powerful for killing structures, and that's why you want to get the objective. So, ability number 1 is Flame Breath. You breathe fire towards the target area, burning enemies for light damage, and you leave a patch of fire on the ground, dealing damage over 4 seconds. The best way to use this ability, it doesn't hit very hard, so what you'll want to do is, say, in the early game you don't want to take much damage, you want to save the Dragon Knight's health so you can wait for your team to commit to a push. You can just run up close enough to the wall, throw a little fire breath on it, you're doing a little bit of damage to it, and you just run away and you take no damage. It's simple as that. You don't really use it for much else. The second ability is Savage Charge. It's a little better than the first ability. So after a short delay, you charge an enemy hero and you knock him back and you deal moderate damage. Now, we're not talking a Tychus or Medic Grenade or an ETC face melt knockback range, no. We're talking, if they're in mid right here and you punt them, they're going to end up all the way back here. That is huge. So if they're ever contesting you in a team fight, you're got all 10 members of the team in the game in the middle lane, and they want to fight you. If they start the fight, you're in the Dragon Knight, you see their support over here, you kick him, he ends up all the way over here. It's going to take him a good 15 seconds to go around in either direction to get back to his team. Within those 15 seconds, they've lost the team fight. If you use this ability correctly at the appropriate moments, it can gain so much value. So, now the most important part about the DK is its trait. It's called Rebel Maker. This makes the DK deal double damage against structures and reduces damage from structures by 60%, making it very tanky when you're just wailing on those keeps and forts. Stuns, slows, silences, polymorphs, and roots against you have a 50% decreased duration. So what that means is that you will never be just stun locked in a DK and the DK will instantly die. You'll be able to get value out of the DK no matter what, unless your team is completely dead and they're just chasing you around the map with 5. And last part about the Dragon Knight is it explodes on death, knocking back nearby enemies. This knockback is smaller. It's in a AoE, and essentially what it's allowing you to do is it's granting you a grace period if they kill the Dragon Knight and they're on top of you to escape, because after you exit the Dragon Knight, your whatever hero you are. So if you're a Kale Fawcett, took the Dragon Knight, if you didn't have that knockback, you'd have 5 people on top of you. You'd die in an instant if you didn't have your team. It's just a nice little safety precaution for whoever is in there. uh, Keep in mind that this Dragon Knight is immune to attack speed slows applied by the forts and the keeps. So typically heroes will their attack speed will be slowed if they're hit by those keeps. If the Dragon Knight is, it simply won't. So you don't have to wait for a creep wave to start wailing on that fort or the keep. You can just go straight on it, and the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to take some damage from the structure. But with the decreased damage by 60%, it won't be an issue. So, with the early game Dragon Knight, if you lose it, it's not the biggest deal. If you get it, it's good. Because you get the first Dragon Knight does not mean you're going to win the game. It's how you push forward with the little advantages you get from the Dragon Knight. What's the best way to explain this? So, experience is the most important thing in Heroes of the Storm. With the first Dragon Knight, you're very weak. Heroes can kill you pretty quickly. What you're going to want to do is you want to go middle or bottom lane or top lane. You're going to want to start taking towers, because what do those towers grant you? Experience. And what that experience is going to do is it's going to allow you to get to a higher level than the enemy. Now, say you take like 4 towers, you've just gained a decent chunk of experience. It's not game ending, but at some point during the game, if you and your enemy collect the same amount of experience besides those towers, you're going to hit level 10 before they hit level 10. And that's when you gain your heroics. And that's super important, especially for this map, because typically the second shrine will spawn around that time frame. So if you're ahead in experience and the shrines have spawned, if you use the level 10 advantage, you can gain a second Dragon Knight because you use that first Dragon Knight to gain an experience advantage. And now, the second Dragon Knight is where you can start opening up the map. So, you killed towers in the beginning of the game. This is where you start killing the forts. Now, you get some nice experience. It's good. Experience is great. But the most important thing about you killing these forts, not only are you able to start pushing into their base, which is the objective of the game, but you're opening up this side of the map. So in the beginning game, look at this. They have so much safety over here. If you want to take their giants, they can go tap a well after fighting you for a little bit and come back healed up. You're in a bad position if you're taking these giants. With that second Dragon Knight, if you kill these forts, or just one of them, you open so much space. You can start invading their knights so they can't take them, or if they're doing them, you can kill them. It's a really good situation. You are just applying much more pressure on the enemy team. And so that's kind of the objective you want to aim for the early and the mid game on Dragon Shire. Now, as the game goes on, with each spawn, the Dragon Knight increases in damage, and by the 16-minute mark, roughly, you can start looking to pressuring keeps. And keeps will, once you kill a keep, you're opening up the core, and now you can start putting damage onto it. But also, it starts spawning catapults into that lane. Now, around 16 minutes, you want to start coordinating more and more pushes with your team with the Dragon Knight, rather than start, killing every fort, every keep. That doesn't matter. You want to focus on one side of the map, pick where you want to open up the game to end it, and go down that lane. And, I mean, at that point, if you capture a 4th or 5th Dragon Knight, it's 23 minutes a game. If you've gotten a keep, if you've played each of these experience advantages correctly, you can rush in with your whole team. Your team can fight their team. Dragon Knight can completely ignore the fight and start whacking on that core. At around 23 minutes, that Dragonite will be able to kill that core by itself. As long as the enemies are being distracted. It can't solo it alone because it will still die quickly to heroes, but it will tear through that like butter. And that's the most important thing. So, quick overview. Lanes. You want to make sure that you're setting up for one person strong skirmisher in the top lane, 4-man rotation in the mid and bottom. Mark camps. They're important, but make sure not to overcommit to them. If you give up the shrine, you're giving up potentially a Dragonite. So be very careful when you take them. And just throughout the game, don't try to take too much with the Dragonite. Just gain experience steadily. You gain an advantage. Little advantages will win you the game. They add up. Trust me. If you try to play this way, if you perfect this strategy, you should win many, many, many more Dragon Shire games than you would playing any other way. So, thanks for tuning into the video. I hope to see you guys around. Have a great time.
Today I'm going to be doing a patch note breakdown. Today we have a really big patch. Probably the biggest patch Heroes have seen in a long time. Might even be bigger than the scaling changes with how some of these changes are working.